While no single conversation is guaranteed to change the trajectory of a career or a company or a relationship or a life, any single conversation can.
Best-selling author and leadership development expert Susan Scott knows that our careers, our companies, our relationships, and our lives succeed or fail gradually, then suddenly, one conversation at a time. Susan's book, Fierce Conversations, was listed on the Wall Street Journal and UPI bestseller lists and was one of USA Today's top 40 business books of 2002. Susan's new book, Fierce Leadership, published in September 2009, shows how the central function of today's leader is to engineer intelligent, spirited conversations that drive alignment and collaboration.
If you want to become a great leader, gain the capacity to connect with colleagues and customers at a deep level or lower your aim. Business leaders for a long time have been insisting that their job is to grow the company and the stock price by any means. And we've seen where that's gotten us. And while conventional measures of business success should not be ignored, I am proposing that it is human connectivity that is the primary means now, the frontier for exponential growth, and the only sustainable competitive edge. Human connectivity. Whether your goal is workplace relations, improving those, or improving your market share, your most valuable currency is relationship with your employees, with your customers. It is emotional capital. That is not a naive, feel-good notion. That is good business sense. So here I am. I've written the book, Fierce Conversations, Achieving Success at Work and in Life, one conversation at a time. And I really thought, okay, I have said all I have to say on the topic. And our training program, very popular, out there thriving. The book is still bestseller on Amazon. Until we began to work on the sustainability piece with our clients, which is really important. I mean, what is the point in bringing in a training if everybody's going to be awfully excited about it and then snap back to what they've been doing forever? If you really want this to become a way of life, the way we talk about things, then you've got to have some sustainability here. And I discovered that some of the best practices were in the way. It was the best practice that was the problem. And it's really interesting because the term best practice refers to the best techniques, the best methods used in an area, in an industry, in an organization. Unfortunately, many companies confuse the latest or the trendiest with best. And fairly soon, the best practices of one era are superseded by the ever more ludicrous fads of the next. So I want to challenge your thinking about practice. Martial arts sensei has said, we are always practicing something. The question is, what are we practicing?
Susan Scott is the founder of Fierce Incorporated, a leadership training and development company. Fierce Incorporated offers training programs in negotiations, conversations with a wide range of stakeholders, intergenerational issues, and accountability. Fierce clients include the Coca-Cola Company, New York Life, CARE, BP, and Cisco. A recognized thought leader in the global business community, Susan Scott was the recipient of the 2008 Stevie Award for Entrepreneur of the Year. Susan and her company, Fierce, are dedicated to transforming the conversations central to their clients' success.
We're going to talk about the worst best practices, but first we have to gain a skill. And I mentioned to you, squid eye. I have a friend named Paul. When Paul moved to Hawaii as a teenager, his family was not particularly wealthy, and he wanted to do anything he could to help put food on the table, to help his family in some way. And he watched the native Hawaiians diving for squid. And they were diving and they would catch all these squid. They had these spears that they would use, and they were coming back with all these squid. And he asked if he could dive with them. And they said, "Sure, kid, come along." So they gave him a spear, and down he went. And every time they come up with tons of squid, and he doesn't have one because he can't even see one. He can't see one. And finally, after weeks of this, he gets over his pride and confesses, look, I'm really frustrated. You guys catch all these squid. How come I'm not catching any? And they laughed, and they said, because you don't have squid eye. And he said, okay, what's squid eye? And they said, it's the ability to see the squid when he does not want you to see him. It is the ability to see the squid that is right there in front of you, but invisible to your eyes. You have to learn to spot the tells that let you know that there's probably a squid there. So, for example, a tell for a squid would be if you see a small mound of stones and maybe a few shells on the sand on the bottom of the ocean, going closer, if there's a little hole in there, it's very probable that a squid lives there. And they told him a couple of other tells too. And it was hard for Paul to find that first mound. It's like if you've ever been hunting for mushrooms, like morel mushrooms, for example, and you're out there and you can't see them, you can't see them, you can't see them. Suddenly you do see one, you almost stumble across it. And then when your eyes adjust because you know what you're looking for, you realize you're standing in a field of them. They're everywhere. When he finally spotted the first tell, he went in and sure enough, there was a squid there. And thereafter, he began to catch a lot of squid, and he also developed an ability to spot the tells for other kinds of sea creatures and began to feed his family very well. What I want us to do is to spot the tells. I want us to practice it together. And I want us to practice it on best practice number 1, which I believe is 360-degree anonymous feedback. And I expect to catch hell from a lot of people on this planet about this one. But let's just practice squid eye, stay open, think about this for a moment. In a company, well, how many of you do, and don't be embarrassed if you do because almost everybody does, but how many of you do offer 360-degree anonymous feedback in your organizations? Yeah, it's very, very common. Totally get it. So also, are you in companies where you do value honesty and openness and transparency, right? You are? Okay. Okay, so where's the disconnect? In the phrase 360-degree anonymous feedback, what's the tell in the name of the practice? Anonymous. There's something terribly off here. That when we have this marvelous opportunity to share with one another what we really think about how we're doing, including praising, as well as, you know, this isn't working so well, what do? We send in good old overworked, underpaid anonymous and run like hell. The other 5 are a focus on hiring smart people, holding people accountable, most employee engagement programs, customer centricity, and legislated optimism. And in his book, The Sun Also Rises, a character is in a bar, he's been drinking, a little drunk, and somebody who sort of knows about his history asks him the question, so how did you go bankrupt? And he responds, gradually, and then suddenly. And I laughed just like you're laughing, and had this amazing insight. We call them apostrophes. I have a niece who called me one day and said, I've just had an apostrophe. I said, really? Yeah, you know, one of those ideas with shiny lights around it. She meant epiphany. But I've always loved the idea of having an apostrophe. And I'm hoping that you have one today, at the very least a semicolon, maybe even an exclamation point. But I had an apostrophe, and my apostrophe was this. Our careers, our companies, our relationships, and indeed our very lives succeed or fail gradually, then suddenly, one conversation at a time. And you know, I really think about my life as if I'm on this fabulous game board, and you're on your own game board too, and today we're standing on this particular square on our individual game boards, and we're looking down around our feet at all of the results that we have currently in our lives. Our professional results, our personal results, results we love, results we're sort of ambivalent about, results we're not happy about at all. And the question is, well, how did I get here? How did I arrive on this square? And I want to suggest it wasn't because I rolled a 3 or a 7. I got here to where I am today with all of the results that I have in my life, one successful conversation at a time, one failed conversation, one missing conversation. In fact, I would suggest to you that it is the missing conversations for which we pay the greatest price, not the ones we tried to have that didn't go so well. It's the ones we just didn't have. We just didn't go there. And I certainly believe that business is fundamentally an extended conversation with our customers, with our employees, with the unknown future that's emerging around us, with our marketplace. And that what gets talked about in an organization and how it gets talked about absolutely determines what is going to happen and what is not going to happen. Conversations can provide clarity or confusion. They can encourage us to tackle our toughest, most complex issues, or they can make us wonder why we even bothered to get out of bed this morning. Our individual wakes are so much larger than we know. And it could be positive. People could describe your emotional wake as an afterglow, or they could describe it as an aftermath, an aftertaste. We all know people who sort of are that giant sucking sound in the room. They walk in and all the joy and energy in life just gets sucked right down the drain. We have baggage. All of us have baggage. Some people come in with a carry-on. And they leave a very negative emotional wake, and then they wonder why, when it's time for the negotiation or the conversation, it doesn't go very well. So please understand that this is not about being careful. I think a careful conversation is a failed conversation because it merely postponed the conversation that wants and needs to take place. This is about speaking with great respect for yourself and for the other party, with clarity, with conviction, with passion.